My name is Sophie Castellano and I'm 32 years old. The night my parents seated me in a hotel hallway at my brother's 10th anniversary party was supposed to be a celebration of love and commitment. Instead, it became the moment I finally showed my family that the failure they'd spent a decade dismissing had actually been the one funding their entire lifestyle. But before I tell you how I revealed that I owned the luxury hotel they'd been bragging about for months, you need to understand the systematic cruelty that led to me sitting at a folding table in a corridor while 156 guests walked past me like I was invisible. I arrived at the Grandview Hotel at 6 p.m. on a cool evening in early November. The hotel was spectacular, a restored historic property perched on a hillside with panoramic views of the city, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of old-world elegance that attracted celebrities and politicians. I'd purchased it 6 months ago for $2.3 million, part of a portfolio of properties I'd been quietly acquiring for the past 5 years. What made tonight special wasn't just the beauty of the venue. It was that my brother Daniel had been bragging for 6 months about hosting his anniversary party at the most exclusive hotel in the city, completely unaware that his disappointing little sister owned every square foot of it. I pulled up to the entrance in my practical Toyota Camry, watching as valets rushed to open doors for Mercedes, BMWs and Teslas. A young valet approached my car with a professional smile that faltered slightly when he saw my modest vehicle among the luxury cars. "Welcome to the Grandview," he said. "Are you here for the Castellano anniversary celebration?" "Yes. I'm Daniel's sister, Sophie." He took my keys, but I noticed his expression shift, a flicker of recognition or perhaps pity. Before I could process it, my father appeared at the top of the entrance stairs. He was wearing a tailored tuxedo, his gray hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating the authority of a man who'd spent his career as a corporate executive. When he saw me, his welcoming smile froze into something harder. "Sophie," he said, not moving from his position at the top of the stairs. "You're here. Not, 'I'm glad you came' or 'you look nice.' Just an acknowledgement of my existence, delivered with the warmth of a building inspector noting a code violation. Of course I'm here, Dad. It's Daniel's anniversary." He descended the stairs slowly, deliberately making me wait. When he reached me, he looked me over with barely concealed disapproval. I was wearing a simple black dress, elegant, appropriate but not designer. My shoes were comfortable heels from a department store, not Louboutins. My jewelry was minimal, small pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. "We need to discuss the seating arrangement," my father said, his voice low but not quite quiet enough to prevent nearby guests from hearing. "Your mother and I made some decisions about the reception layout." "Okay," I said slowly, sensing something was wrong. "The ballroom is set up for 150 guests. We've arranged the seating very carefully. Family at the front tables, Daniel's business associates and important connections in the middle section, extended family and friends toward the back." He paused. "There wasn't really an appropriate table for you in the main ballroom." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means we've set up a space for you in the corridor outside the ballroom. A small table. You'll still be able to hear everything, see some of what's happening through the doorway. But we felt it was best to keep the main ballroom for people who are more centrally involved in Daniel's life." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're seating me in the hallway? Outside the ballroom? It's a lovely spot actually. Very elegant corridor. You'll be quite comfortable." He gestured toward a hotel staff member carrying a folding table. "We've arranged everything. Please don't make a scene about this, Sophie." Daniel and Christina worked very hard to make tonight perfect. Before I could respond, my mother appeared in the doorway wearing a burgundy gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent, or at least more than the rent she thought I paid. She saw me and immediately walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor with the precision of someone who knew she commanded attention. "Sophie, darling," she said, though her tone held no warmth. "Your father explained the seating situation?" "He said I'm sitting in the hallway." "In the corridor, yes. It's actually quite a thoughtful solution. The ballroom is really for immediate family and Daniel's professional network. You understand." She glanced at my dress with barely concealed disappointment. "Did you not think to wear something more formal? This is a significant event." "This is formal," I said quietly. "It's adequate, I suppose. Well, no matter. Come, let me show you where you'll be sitting." She took my arm with a grip that looked gentle but felt controlling, steering me through the lobby toward the grand ballroom. The ballroom was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city lights, round tables dressed in ivory linens with elaborate centerpieces of roses and orchids, place settings that looked like they cost $200 per person. I could see 156 guests already mingling. Some I recognized as family members, others as Daniel's colleagues from his investment firm, and many I didn't know at all. My mother walked me past the ballroom entrance, down the elegant corridor that connected to the private dining rooms, and stopped at a small folding table that had been set up against the wall. It was the kind of table you'd use for overflow seating at a casual event, not a formal anniversary celebration. A single place setting sat on top, a plate, silverware, a water glass. A single folding chair. No centerpiece, no linens beyond a simple white cloth, no table number card. Here we are, my mother said brightly. You'll be able to hear all the speeches from here and you have a partial view through the doorway. Really, it's quite nice. I looked at the folding table, then at the ballroom entrance about 15 feet away, then back at my mother. Why are you doing this? Doing what, dear? We're accommodating you at a very full event. Daniel and Christina have 150 guests in that ballroom. Every table is full with people who matter to their lives. We simply didn't have room at the main tables. I'm his sister. Yes, and you're welcome to attend the celebration. Just from here. She adjusted her shawl. Now I need to get back to greeting guests. The cocktail hour is starting and your father and I are hosting the welcome remarks. Dinner will be served around 7:30. I'm sure someone will bring you a plate. She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking back toward the ballroom, leaving me standing alone next to a folding table in a hotel corridor. Guests began arriving in larger numbers. They walked past me on their way to the ballroom, many glancing at the folding table with confusion or curiosity. Some recognized me and looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to acknowledge me or pretend they hadn't seen me. Others simply walked past, their attention focused on the celebration ahead. Then my father's voice echoed from the ballroom, amplified by a microphone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very special celebration of Daniel and Christina's 10 years of marriage. We're so thrilled to have you all here at the Grandview Hotel, truly one of the most magnificent venues in the city. Applause. Laughter. The sound of glasses clinking. Before we begin the evening's festivities, my father continued, I want to acknowledge everyone who made this evening possible. To my wife Margaret for her impeccable planning. To Daniel and Christina for building such a remarkable life together. And to all of you, our family, our friends, our colleagues, for being the important people in our lives who truly matter. He paused and I could hear people murmuring in agreement. Now, some of you may have noticed a small table in the corridor outside this ballroom. That's where we've seated my daughter Sophie. She wanted to attend tonight's celebration and we wanted to accommodate her, but frankly, the real seats in this ballroom are for important people. People who have achieved something meaningful. People who contribute to Daniel's success and social network. Sophie is, well, she's family technically, but she hasn't exactly achieved the kind of success that warrants a place at the main tables. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood frozen next to my folding table, unable to see my father's face but hearing his words carry through the corridor with perfect clarity. He'd said it into a microphone. To 156 people. He'd announced to everyone present that I wasn't important enough to sit in the main ballroom. So if you need to use the restrooms or the coat check, you'll pass Sophie in the hallway, my father continued, his tone almost jovial now, as if he'd made a practical announcement about logistics rather than publicly humiliated his own daughter. Please don't feel obligated to stop and chat with her. We know you're here to celebrate with Daniel and Christina. Now let's begin this wonderful evening. Music started playing. Conversations resumed. And I stood in the corridor, trying to process what had just happened while guests began walking past me on their way to various parts of the hotel. Some avoided eye contact entirely. Others stared at me with a mixture of pity and second-hand embarrassment. A few took photos, discreetly, but I saw them. By the time 30 minutes had passed, at least 40 people had walked past me, and I'd become a spectacle. The daughter seated at a folding table in the hallway. The one who wasn't important enough for a real seat. If you're genuinely enjoying this story, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. But only if you're finding this interesting. No pressure at all. Let me take you back 8 years so you can understand how we got here. I need you to see the pattern of dismissal and financial manipulation that led to my parents seating me in a corridor while 156 people witnessed my humiliation. I grew up as the younger child in a family that worshipped professional achievement and social status. Daniel, 5 years older than me, was the golden child from birth. He went to Princeton, got his MBA from Harvard, and landed a position at a top investment firm in Manhattan, making $420,000 a year. He married Christina, a corporate attorney from a wealthy family with connections that made my parents giddy with social climbing opportunities. My parents threw elaborate parties for his promotions, framed his business press mentions, and introduced him as our son, the investment director. I took a different path. I studied accounting at a state university, graduated with honors, and took a job at a small firm specializing in forensic accounting and asset recovery. My starting salary was $58,000, respectable but not impressive by my family's standards. My parents told their friends I worked with numbers, in the same tone they might use to say, works at a call center. What they didn't know was that I was exceptional at my job. I had an instinct for finding hidden assets, tracking complex financial trails, and recovering money from sophisticated fraud schemes. Within 3 years, I'd been promoted to senior forensic accountant. Within 5 years, I'd helped recover $47 million in assets from various fraud cases, earning substantial performance bonuses that my family never asked about. At 27, I left the firm and started my own forensic accounting consultancy. My first year, I made $340,000. My second year, $680,000. By my 5th year, I was earning over $1.2 million annually, working with attorneys, insurance companies, and corporations to track down hidden assets and financial fraud. I invested everything carefully. Real estate, mostly small apartment buildings at first, then commercial properties, and finally 6 months ago the Grandview Hotel for $2.3 million. I kept driving my Camry. I kept living in a modest condo. I kept wearing department store clothes. Because I'd learned early that my family didn't value achievement they couldn't show off. So why bother telling them? But here's the cruel irony. While my family spent 8 years telling me I was a disappointment, they had no problem taking my money when they needed it. It started 7 years ago when Daniel needed a down payment for his first apartment in Manhattan. He came to me embarrassed, explaining that his signing bonus hadn't come through yet and he needed $45,000 immediately or he'd lose the apartment. "Don't tell Mom and Dad," he said. "They don't need to know I'm short on cash. This is just temporary." I gave him $50,000 and told him not to worry about paying it back quickly. 3 months later, my mother needed help with unexpected medical bills. $15,000. Then my father's business consulting venture needed capital. $30,000. Then Daniel needed money for Christina's engagement ring. $22,000. Then my parents needed help with property taxes. $28,000. It became a pattern that repeated itself over and over. Someone would call. Always late at night, always stressed, always with an urgent need. Over 7 years, I'd given my family $412,000. I tracked every transfer in a detailed spreadsheet. Date, amount, recipient, stated reason, confirmation of transfer. They never thanked me publicly. At family dinners, they'd praise Daniel for picking up the $300 restaurant check while I sat quietly knowing I'd sent my father $8,000 that same week. When my mother bought expensive furniture, she'd show it off to relatives while failing to mention I'd sent her $12,000 for emergency expenses the month before. When Daniel and Christina bought a weekend house in the Hamptons, my parents hosted a celebration party, funded partially by money Daniel had borrowed from me and never repaid. The exclusion grew worse over time. Family vacations happened without me. "We didn't think you could afford it," my mother explained when I found out they'd spent 3 weeks in Greece with Daniel and Christina. "We know your little accounting job doesn't pay much." Holiday celebrations got scheduled around Daniel's availability. "He's so busy and successful," my father would say. "We have to accommodate his schedule." When I mentioned I was also busy, my father waved dismissively. "You count numbers all day. You can take time off." At family gatherings, I became invisible. Conversations centered on Daniel's achievements, Christina's cases, their social circle, their investments. When I tried to contribute to discussions, my mother would interrupt. "That's nice, Sophie. Did you hear about Daniel's promotion?" If I mentioned a success at work, my father would change the subject. Speaking of success, Daniel closed a $200 million deal last month. The worst part was that they genuinely believed I was struggling financially. They'd make comments about my little condo, and my sensible car, and my budget-conscious lifestyle. They'd give me gift cards for Christmas while giving Daniel and Christina luxury items. They'd offer me their hand-me-down furniture while buying expensive new pieces for themselves. All while I was funding their lifestyle with money they never acknowledged. 6 months ago, when the Grandview Hotel came on the market, I saw an opportunity. Daniel had been talking about it for weeks. How he wanted to host his 10th anniversary party there, how exclusive it was, how difficult it was to book events. It's the kind of place that really shows you've made it, he told the family at dinner. Only the most successful people can host events at the Grandview. So I bought it. I used my forensic accounting skills to structure the purchase through an LLC that obscured my personal involvement. I hired an excellent general manager named Patricia Reeves who knew exactly who I was and what I was planning. And when Daniel contacted the hotel 6 months ago to book his anniversary party, Patricia quoted him standard rates and helped him plan every detail, never once mentioning that his struggling little sister owned the property. And now, sitting at my folding table in the corridor while 156 guests walked past me on their way to and from the ballroom, watching some of them take photos of my humiliation, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The cocktail hour lasted until 7:15 p.m. I sat at my folding table alone while guests moved in and out of the ballroom. Some relatives I hadn't seen in years walked past me without saying hello, clearly uncomfortable. Others I didn't recognize at all. Daniel's business connections, people from Christina's firm. A few stopped to make awkward small talk. "Sophie, I didn't expect to see you here," my Aunt Linda said, eyeing my folding table setup with obvious confusion. "Where else would I be? It's my brother's anniversary." She glanced toward the ballroom, then back at me. "Yes, but out here? Don't you have a seat inside? Apparently the real seats are for important people." Her face flushed with embarrassment. Not for herself but for me. She touched my shoulder in a gesture that felt more like condolence than comfort. "I'm sorry, honey. This is something." Then she hurried into the ballroom, clearly not wanting to be associated with my humiliation. At 7:30 p.m. dinner service began. I could hear the sounds of plates clinking, conversation rising and falling, laughter echoing from the ballroom. The smells of the meal drifted into the corridor. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables, some kind of rich sauce. My stomach growled. I'd skipped lunch expecting to eat at the party. A server appeared with a single plate. She was young, probably in her early 20s, and she looked genuinely distressed as she approached my folding table. "Miss Castellano, I have your dinner. I'm so sorry about this setup. She glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "This is not how we normally handle guests." "I know," I said quietly. "It's not your fault." She set down the plate, the same meal being served in the ballroom. Salmon, vegetables, wild rice, a small salad. But where the ballroom guests had elaborate presentations on fine china, mine came on a standard plate that looked like it came from the staff cafeteria. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. "Wine? Water. Water is fine." She brought a pitcher and a glass, then lingered for a moment. "For what it's worth, the staff is talking about this. We all think it's wrong." I looked up at her, surprised. "Thank you for saying that. I shouldn't say this because it's not professional, but your family is being really cruel. Everyone can see it. Some of the guests have been complaining to us about it. They're embarrassed to be part of this event." She lowered her voice. "If you need anything at all, just ask for me. My name is Rachel." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me alone with my single plate at my folding table in the corridor, feeling slightly less invisible because one person had acknowledged that this was wrong. I ate slowly, listening to the sounds of celebration from the ballroom. At 8 p.m. the speeches began. I could hear my father's voice again, praising Daniel and Christina. Then my mother, getting emotional about how proud she was of her successful son and his accomplished wife. Then Daniel himself, thanking everyone for coming, talking about the journey of the past 10 years, expressing gratitude for his family's support. He never mentioned me. Not once. In his entire speech about family and support and gratitude, my name never came up. At 8:45 p.m., Dessert was served in the ballroom. No one brought me anything. I sat at my folding table watching guests walk past me again, many of them holding plates of what looked like an elaborate chocolate dessert with raspberry sauce and gold leaf garnish. At 9 p.m. dancing began. The DJ played upbeat music and I could see through the doorway as couples filled the dance floor. My parents danced together looking elegant and proud. Daniel and Christina had their anniversary dance, surrounded by cheering guests. The celebration continued without me, as if I weren't sitting just 15 feet away in the corridor. At 9:15 p.m. I stood up, smoothed my simple black dress, and walked down the corridor toward the hotel's administrative offices. Several guests saw me leaving but no one asked where I was going. Why would they? I wasn't important enough to track. Patricia Reeves was waiting in her office, exactly as I'd asked her to be. She stood up when I entered, her expression professional but sympathetic. "Miss Castellano. Is it time?" "It's time," I said. She handed me a tablet displaying security camera footage from the evening. Guests walking past my folding table, some taking photos, others whispering to each other. She also handed me a printed transcript of my father's announcement at the beginning of the evening, prepared by one of the staff members who'd been in the ballroom. "Everything is prepared as you requested," Patricia said. "The ballroom's audiovisual system is connected and ready. All you need to do is give the authorization and I'll make the announcement." I read through the transcript once more, seeing my father's words in black and white. "Real seats are for important people. People who have achieved something meaningful. Sophie is. Well, she's family technically, but she hasn't exactly achieved the kind of success that warrants a place at the main tables." I signed the authorization form. "Sophie Castellano, owner, Grandview Hotel Holdings LLC. Let them finish their dessert," I said. "Then make the announcement during the thank you speech. I want everyone there." Patricia nodded. "Are you certain? Once we do this, there's no taking it back." I've never been more certain about anything in my life. She picked up the tablet and headed toward the ballroom. I followed at a distance, positioning myself near the corridor entrance where I could see but wouldn't be immediately noticed. At 9:47 p.m., Daniel stood up to give his closing remarks. The DJ lowered the music. Guests turned their attention to the front of the ballroom where Daniel and Christina stood together, holding hands, smiling at their 156 guests. "Christina and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," Daniel began. "This hotel, this celebration, this entire evening has been everything we dreamed of. We worked so hard to book the Grandview. It's truly the most prestigious venue in the city, and we're honored to share this space with all of you." My mother wiped tears from her eyes. My father beamed with pride. Guests raised their glasses in preparation for a toast. "We especially want to thank our parents for their support and guidance," Daniel continued. "And to everyone here, our family, our friends, our colleagues, thank you for being the people who matter most in our lives." That's when Patricia walked into the ballroom from a side entrance, moving with quiet authority toward the front where Daniel stood. She whispered something to him and I saw his confident expression shift to confusion. "I'm sorry," Daniel said to the crowd. "The hotel manager needs to make an announcement." Patricia took the microphone Daniel offered her. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Reeves and I'm the general manager of the Grandview Hotel. I apologize for interrupting this beautiful celebration, but there's been a situation that requires immediate clarification." The room went silent. Confused faces turned toward Patricia. My mother looked annoyed at the interruption. My father looked impatient. "There seems to be some confusion about this property and tonight's event," Patricia continued. "Mr. Castellano, you mentioned that this hotel is prestigious and that you worked hard to book it. That's partially true. We are selective about our events. However, I need to inform everyone here that the Grandview Hotel has an owner who has some concerns about tonight's arrangements." Daniel's confusion deepened. "What concerns? We paid our deposit. We signed a contract. What's the problem?" "The problem, Mr. Castellano, is that your family has treated the property owner with what can only be described as extraordinary disrespect, despite the fact that she waived certain fees to accommodate your event here." Patricia consulted her tablet. "The owner is present at tonight's celebration. In fact, she's been present all evening, seated at a folding table in the corridor outside this ballroom." Every head in the room turned toward the doorway where I stood. I stepped forward into the ballroom, still wearing my simple black dress, no longer trying to hide in the shadows. The silence was absolute. I could see the moment recognition hit different people. Some guests looked shocked, others confused, a few seemed to immediately understand what was happening. My parents' faces went pale. Daniel's confident smile disappeared completely. Patricia continued speaking, her voice clear and professional. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Sophie Castellano, who purchased the Grandview Hotel 6 months ago for $2.3 million. She is the owner of this property and she has been since May of this year. That's not possible, my father said, his voice cracking. Sophie doesn't have that kind of money. She's an accountant. She works at some small firm. Actually, Dad, I run my own forensic accounting consultancy. I've been running it for 5 years. Last year I earned $1.2 million. I walked further into the ballroom and Patricia handed me the microphone. I also own 3 apartment buildings, 2 commercial properties, and as of 6 months ago, this hotel. My mother found her voice. Sophie, if this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to tell you about my work, my success, my achievements, you interrupted to talk about Daniel. Because when I bought my first investment property, you called it cute, and then spent 30 minutes discussing Daniel's stock portfolio. Because I learned that my accomplishments didn't matter to this family unless they came with the kind of visible status you could brag about to your friends. I looked around at the 156 witnesses, many of whom were recording this on their phones. Good. I wanted this documented. But here's the interesting part, I continued. While you spent years telling me I was a disappointment, you had no problem taking my money. Over the past 7 years, I've given this family $412,000. Daniel needed $50,000 for an apartment down payment. I gave it to him. Mom needed help with medical bills. $15,000. Dad needed capital for a business venture. $30,000. Daniel needed money for Christina's engagement ring. $22,000. Christina's face had gone white. He turned to Daniel. You borrowed money from your sister for my ring? It was temporary, Daniel stammered. I was going to pay her back. Did you? I asked. Did you ever pay me back? Did anyone in this family ever pay me back or even say thank you? I pulled out my phone and held up a document. I have a spreadsheet. Every transfer, every date, every amount. $412,000 over 7 years. And tonight, Dad stood at this microphone and told 156 people that I haven't achieved anything meaningful, that I don't deserve a real seat at the table because I'm not important enough. My father tried to recover. Sophie, you're taking this out of context. No, Dad. I'm putting it in context. You seated me at a folding table in a corridor. You announced to everyone here that real seats are for important people and I'm not one of them. You said this into a microphone in a hotel I own, at a party I made possible by waiving the $35,000 venue fee as my gift to Daniel and Christina. The gasps from the crowd were audible. Daniel's face had gone from pale to red. You own this hotel? You waived the venue fee? Why didn't you say something? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me. I wanted witnesses. I wanted everyone in this room to see exactly who this family is when they think someone doesn't matter. I looked at Patricia. Can you show them the security footage? Patricia pulled up the tablet and projected images onto the screen behind the head table. Footage from earlier in the evening showing guests walking past my folding table, some taking photos, others whispering and pointing. The images were damning. A woman alone at a makeshift table in a corridor while a celebration happened without her. This is what you did, I said to my parents. In front of 156 people, you made it clear that I'm not real family. You humiliated me publicly, thinking I had no power, no resources, no ability to respond. You were wrong. My mother was crying now, but whether from genuine emotion or embarrassment I couldn't tell. Sophie, please. You're ruining Daniel's anniversary. No, Mom. You ruined it when you decided to treat me like I was invisible. When you seated me in a hallway. When Dad announced that I wasn't important enough for a real seat. I turned to address the entire room. To everyone here, I want to be clear that I hold nothing against you. You're guests at what should have been a celebration. But I need you to understand what you witnessed tonight. You walked past me in that corridor. Some of you took photos. All of you heard my father announce that I wasn't important enough to sit with you. I wanted you to see that, to remember it, because I needed witnesses to understand who this family really is. An older woman I didn't recognize stood up from one of the middle tables. I've been uncomfortable all evening, she said. I'm a colleague of Daniel's, and when I arrived and saw that set up in the corridor, I thought it was for hotel staff or vendors. When I realized it was for his sister, I almost left. This is cruel. This is wrong. Another person spoke up, a man from the back. I took a photo of that folding table earlier because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought there must be some explanation. Now I know the explanation is just that your family is awful. More voices joined in, some supporting me, others defending my parents, many just expressing shock at what was unfolding. The carefully orchestrated celebration had devolved into chaos. Daniel tried to regain control. Everyone please. Let's calm down. Sophie, if you want to discuss family issues, we can do that privately, but you can't just. I can't just what, Daniel? Exercise my property rights? Make an announcement at an event in my hotel? Tell the truth about how you've treated me. I looked at Patricia. Please inform my family that after tonight, they're not welcome to book events at this property. They can finish this celebration, I paid for it after all, but they won't be coming back. You can't ban us from a hotel, my father shouted. We'll sue. You'll do nothing, Dad. As I have documentation of everything. Every dollar I gave you. Every dismissive comment. Security footage of tonight's seating arrangement. A recording of your announcement that I'm not important enough for a real seat. I looked around the room one final time. To everyone here, please enjoy the rest of the evening. The bar is still open, the music will continue, and I hope you have a wonderful time despite the drama. But understand that you witnessed something tonight. A family publicly humiliating someone they assumed was powerless, only to discover she owned the ground they were standing on. I handed the microphone back to Patricia and walked out of the ballroom, through the corridor where my folding table still sat as evidence of their cruelty, and out into the cool night air. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from people who've dealt with difficult family dynamics. Behind me, I could hear voices rising in the ballroom. Arguments, exclamations, the sound of a celebration completely derailed. I got in my Camry and drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone started ringing at 10:23 p.m. Daniel called first, then my father, then my mother, then Daniel again. By midnight, they'd called 67 times. The voicemails were a mix of anger, denial, and desperate attempts at damage control. Daniel, you humiliated us. You ruined my anniversary. How could you do this? My father, this is unacceptable behavior, Sophie. We need to talk about your outburst. My mother, please call us back. We can explain everything. You're taking this all wrong. I blocked all their numbers at 12:15 a.m. and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to 94 missed calls from various family members and friends of the family. I blocked most of them, but I did read a few text messages. From my Aunt Linda. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I should have said something years ago about how they treated you. What they did last night was unforgivable. From 3 of Daniel's colleagues. Messages expressing shock, apologies for not speaking up, and in one case an offer to meet for coffee because, I'd like to hear your side of things. I suspect there's a lot more to this story. From Christina, Daniel's wife. I didn't know. About the money you gave him, about how they treated you. I'm filing for separation. I can't be married to someone who would treat family this way and lie to me about it. That last message surprised me. I didn't respond immediately, but I saved it. 2 weeks after the anniversary party, I received a letter from an attorney representing my parents and Daniel. They were demanding I return the $412,000 they claimed they'd given me in good faith, and that I'd misappropriated. The letter also threatened to sue me for intentional infliction of emotional distress for my public attack at the anniversary party. I forwarded everything to my attorney along with my spreadsheet of transfers, bank records showing every transaction, text messages and emails requesting money, and security footage from the anniversary party. My attorney's response was swift and comprehensive. A cease and desist letter that included documentation of every transfer I'd made, proof that all funds were gifts, many of which had written messages from my family thanking me and promising to pay me back someday. and a counter-threat to sue for defamation if they continued making false claims about the nature of the financial transactions. I also included screenshots of my father's public announcement that I wasn't important enough for a real seat, along with testimony from hotel staff about the seating arrangement. My attorney made it clear that if they pursued legal action, we would file counterclaims for emotional distress, public humiliation, and financial exploitation. I never heard from their attorney again. 3 months after the anniversary party, I ran into Christina at a coffee shop downtown. She was alone, looking tired but somehow more at peace than I'd ever seen her at family events. "Sophie," she said when she saw me, "can I talk to you for a moment?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Of course." She sat down with her coffee, took a breath, and said, "I owe you an enormous apology. I was there when they seated you in that corridor. I saw the folding table. I heard your father's announcement. And I said nothing. I let it happen. You're not responsible for their behavior. Maybe not, but I'm responsible for mine. I should have said something. I should have offered you my seat or walked out in protest, or at minimum acknowledged that what was happening was wrong." She looked down at her coffee. "I've been thinking about that night a lot. About what kind of person I've become by staying silent while watching someone be treated that way." "You're getting divorced," I said. It wasn't a question. "Filed the papers last month. It's been final for 2 weeks." She took a sip of her coffee. "That night when I found out Daniel had borrowed money from you for my engagement ring, that he'd taken $22,000 from his sister and then let his parents seat her in a hallway, I realized I didn't know who I'd married. Or maybe I'd always known and just didn't want to acknowledge it. I'm sorry your marriage ended. I'm not. I'm sorry it took me 10 years and a public disaster to realize I'd married into a family that treats people as disposable if they can't provide status or money." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is for you. It's not everything Daniel owes you, but it's $22,000, what he borrowed for my ring. I'm selling the ring and using the money to pay you back." "Christina, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. That ring represents money taken from you under false pretenses. I can't wear it knowing that." She pushed the envelope across the table. "Take it. Please. Let me do this one thing right." I took the envelope and we sat together for another hour talking about families and patterns and the courage it takes to walk away from people who will never see your worth. It's been 10 months since my brother's anniversary party. The Grandview Hotel has become even more successful. I've hosted over 60 events and the property's reputation has only grown. The business generates substantial revenue, and I've been able to hire a full staff to manage operations while I continue running my forensic accounting consultancy. My parents lost their house 7 months ago. Without my monthly financial support, which had been funding approximately 40% of their lifestyle expenses, they couldn't maintain their mortgage payments or property taxes. They sold the house and moved into a rental condo in a less expensive neighborhood. I heard through my Aunt Linda that they tried to take out loans using Daniel's income as collateral, but Daniel, facing his own financial pressures from his divorce, refused. Daniel and Christina's divorce was finalized 5 months ago. Christina got the weekend house in the Hamptons, and Daniel had to liquidate several investments to cover the settlement. His social status took a hit. Apparently, many of the guests from the anniversary party have distanced themselves from him after witnessing what happened. One of his colleagues told me that Daniel's reputation in his professional circle has never quite recovered from that night at the Grandview. My parents have tried to reach out 3 times through intermediaries. My Aunt Linda, a family friend, and once through a minister from a church my mother started attending. Each time the message is the same: they've reflected on their mistakes and want to rebuild our relationship. I haven't responded to any of these attempts, because rebuilding would require them to actually understand what they did wrong, not just regret getting caught. It would require them to acknowledge years of dismissal, cruelty, and financial exploitation. And from everything I've heard, they're still telling people that I overreacted and made a scene at Daniel's anniversary. They still don't understand that the scene was theirs, not mine. They created it when they seated me at a folding table in a corridor. I just made sure everyone saw it clearly. I have a new family now, one I've built from choice rather than obligation. My Aunt Linda and I have dinner every week. Christina and I meet for coffee monthly, and she's become a genuine friend. I've gotten deeply involved in mentoring programs for young women in forensic accounting and financial independence. These relationships are based on mutual respect and authentic connection, something I never had with my biological family. Last month, I was having dinner with my Aunt Linda when she mentioned that my parents' financial situation has become quite dire. They're struggling to afford their rent, my father's health issues are expensive, and Daniel can't help them because he's managing his own post-divorce financial challenges. They're hoping you'll reach out, my Aunt Linda said carefully. They think if they wait long enough, you'll forgive them and start sending money again. They're waiting for the wrong thing, I told her. I'm not their emergency fund anymore. I'm not their invisible daughter who exists to subsidize their lifestyle while they publicly dismiss me. I'm done being that person. I don't blame you, she said. But I think they genuinely believe that eventually you'll come back because that's what family does. Family treats each other with respect. Family doesn't seat you in a hallway and announce to 156 people that you're not important enough for a real seat. Family doesn't take $412,000 over 7 years and never say thank you. What they had with me wasn't family. It was financial exploitation combined with public humiliation. She nodded slowly. You're right. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you for recognizing that and walking away. 2 weeks ago, I was at the Grandview Hotel reviewing plans for an upcoming charity gala when I noticed a couple being shown the ballroom for a potential anniversary party. The woman looked around in wonder. This is perfect, she said to her husband. It feels like a place that really celebrates love and family. I almost laughed at the irony. This ballroom, where my family had seated me in a corridor and told 156 people I wasn't important enough, had become a symbol of celebration for other people. But maybe that's exactly what it should be. Maybe the best response to being excluded from one family's celebration is to create a space where other people can celebrate properly, with dignity and respect for everyone present. The folding table is gone now. I had it removed the day after the anniversary party. The corridor outside the ballroom is now beautifully decorated with comfortable seating areas and elegant side tables. A space where guests can gather and converse, where everyone is welcome and no one is marked as less important. But I kept a photo of how it looked that night. A single folding table against the wall, a lonely place setting, the physical manifestation of my family's cruelty. I have it framed in my office as a reminder. Not a reminder of pain, but of the moment I stopped waiting for people to see my worth and instead showed them that I'd never needed their validation in the first place. I'm Sophie Castellano. I'm 32 years old. I own a luxury hotel, run a successful forensic accounting consultancy, have investments worth over $6 million, and I'm surrounded by people who actually respect me. My family seated me at a folding table in a corridor and told 156 people I wasn't important enough for a real seat. 4 hours later, they learned I'd purchased their exclusive venue for $2.3 million 6 months earlier. 4 hours later, 156 people witnessed the exact moment my family realized they'd been wrong about everything. And I've never been happier in my entire life.